Last May, I got an activity watch as a birthday present. It came in this really nice box, and I was super excited to take it out for a spin. Because I don't know if any of you have a watch like this one, but these watches are crazily perceptive. When they say they track everything, they mean everything. From the amount of calories you've burned, to the number of steps you've taken, to how many hours you've slept at night. And so on one really nice spring day, I decided to take my new watch out for a run. And every second of that run, I found myself obsessed with checking the metrics of my watch, trying to keep myself within a target heart rate by speeding up or slowing down, convinced that I would be better if I hit the 5,000th step. And then when I came back home all gross and sweaty, my younger sister asked me if our local Walgreens was open. And I was shocked. I mean, I could have told you the amount of calories I burned to the 10th place, exactly how many steps I took. And during my run, I had passed right by the Walgreens twice. But I still couldn't tell my sister if it was open or not. Before this, I could have told anyone anything. If the Walgreens was open, how many people I'd passed, which trees were in bloom. Now, I'm not a track star or anything. At most, I'm a casual runner. So did knowing any of that information make me any better? Was I just using technology for the sake of using technology? I mean, I had so much more fun before I was worrying about all of these numbers. I had sacrificed a relaxing, enjoyable run for knowing my heart rate, a clear head for a bunch of numbers, being for knowing. Our obsession with information fascinates me. There's something about the way that we chain ourselves to invisible data, staring at their half-truths and believing them for reality. Are we truly better off knowing exactly how many calories we've burned or our heart rate at any given point in time? I'm not entirely sure, but I do know that we need to rethink the way that we interact with technology and technological advancements. So, what do I mean by technological advancements? Let's take the fridge for an example. I mean, the fridge was a milestone invention. We realized that sticking our food in ice would not work all year round, so we built the ice box. And then we realized that we didn't even need ice to keep food cold, and we built the electric fridge. And now, I'm standing in Best Buy and I'm staring down an aisle of smart fridges, all equipped with personal list makers and touch screens. Our fridges are now capable of anticipating and letting us know not only if our water filter needs changing or the temperature of our produce at a point in time, but also contain expiration tracking, internal cameras, grocery list notifications. You can even turn your ice maker on and off from your cell phone. We live in a fast-paced world where the metric of success for technology is determined by how much information it can convey, regardless of whether that information is useful or not. I mean, let's look back at this fridge. Somewhere our quest for technological efficiency changed, from mechanical to stop the ice from melting, to informational, to let us know more. And this is where we begin to lose ourselves, in this quest for information. Today, I'm going to be talking about when technology no longer becomes useful, and what the implications of that inutility is for our mental health. So, how many of you use or have used Jupyter or Canvas to check your grades? Great, quite a few of you. I know over the course of my high school career, almost all of my classes have used some form of real-time online grade updates. That is, the second that my teacher grades my test and updates my scores, I'll know. And so every time I've taken a test, it always feels like I'm constantly refreshing Jupyter every 10 minutes, desperately hoping a grade will show up. And this isn't just a problem with me, it's a problem with parents as well. A school district in New York reported that out of the parents that check their child's grades, over a quarter check at least once a day. That's a lot, especially for grades that aren't even yours. Parents interpret the presence of an online gradebook not as an option, but as an obligation. And online gradebooks have been shown to foster compulsive behavior and increase grade anxiety. So what's the trade-off here? Is the new technology actually worth the increased compulsive behavior? This isn't an isolated incident. We're an anxious planet. Worldwide, roughly 1 in 25 people suffer from some sort of anxiety disorder. And America is far above other nations in general anxiety rates. And we're just becoming more anxious. According to a poll by the American Psychiatrists Association, 62% of Americans felt more anxious in 2020 than they did in 2019. And that's fair. A lot of anxiety-inducing things happened in the past year. A nerve-wracking election, a global pandemic, just to name a few. But this isn't new. Our anxiety rates have been increasing for years, regardless of age, gender, or ethnicity. So what's the cause for anxiety? Lots of researchers look to the recent rise in technology as the answer. Not the technology itself, but the rise in hyper-awareness and compulsive behavior that comes along with it. 75% of the respondents to the APA survey said that they were anxious about the coronavirus pandemic. And to be honest, if they'd asked me, I would have probably said yes, too. I mean, like a lot of Americans, the prospect of a deadly global pandemic terrified me. I remember at the time, a lot of websites like Google and Twitter used to display daily case counts, like as actual numbers. And I remember staying up really late into the night, watching as the digits of this case total slowly rose, my eyes growing wary from the blue light of the screen. Because at the time, the pandemic seemed so insurmountable. I mean, we barely knew anything about the disease, where it came from, how it spread, how to cure it. That the only way that I felt like I was in control was by staying informed. But I realized that after all of my insomniac scrolling, I would just wake up the next morning with a headache, my sleep schedule distorted, and my mind disoriented. Because if the amount of case numbers was going to be 250,000 at 3 a.m., it was going to be 250,000 at 3 a.m., regardless of whether I was checking it every minute or if I had just woken up once. And this goes beyond global pandemics. I mean, think about how many times you check your phone in a day. I mean, I think right now my daily notification amount is about 100 notifications per day. We often get so many notifications that we feel like we need to check that it's easy to lose ourselves in the little red bubbles. And sometimes we get so used to compulsively checking for a message or a data set or an answer that we check our phone without even needing to. One study showed that young people check their phone every 15 minutes, often without any prompt or notification. And at the end of the day, I think it all boils down to this idea of control. Because no matter how hard I try, I can't control how many steps I take in a day or what I'm going to get on my next English essay. But with an activity watch or an online gradebook, at least I can try. And so now it feels hopeless, right? We're more anxious, we're checking technology obsessively, and it doesn't feel like we can stop. But I firmly believe that if we reshape the way that we think about our relationship with technology, we can begin to form better connections with the devices around us. So in my research and my many experiences with obsessive technology use, I devised a sort of game plan for the next time that I pick up a data set or a new activity watch or something like that. So when I'm buying a new piece of technology, I think safe. So I'm standing in Best Buy and I'm looking at an activity watch, or I'm sitting in bed and I'm looking at election polling numbers, for example. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what's the next number going to be? What am I going to do with this watch? I'm super excited by all of the information that's rushing into my brain. But the first thing that I realized that we should do is to stop. Just take a minute to separate yourself from your brain and its dopamine rushes. I found that if I remove myself from the environment that fosters compulsive behavior, I'm able to return again with a clearer head. And then I ask myself 3 questions. First, is the data actionable? Okay, so say I bought this activity watch that's on the shelf in front of me. I take it out for a run and I find out that I took 2,643 steps on my run. What am I going to do with that information? Personally, I don't even know if 2,643 is a low number or a high number for a run. But if you're the kind of person that's going to look at a number like 2,643 and be motivated to run more, then this piece of technology is perfectly actionable for you. It's this kind of mentality that we need to think about when we're buying a new item. What purpose does this data serve? Will you actually use the information that you're given? Second, is the item frequently fluctuating? So I'm a pretty healthy woman. Sometimes, if I'm lucky, I can do a push-up without crying. When I'm going on a run, my heart rate usually changes from like 90.3 beats per minute to 90.8. That's not really a huge change. If I bought an activity watch, I'd be so fixated on that heart rate number that my eyes would be so glued to the screen that I'd probably end up running straight into a tree. But for someone with a heart condition whose heart rate levels are constantly changing, having a kind of repository for information and data analysis would be incredibly useful for you. And lastly, is the item or data essential? So, as I said in the beginning, I'm no track star, I'm not an Olympic athlete. Using this data won't help me improve myself in the long run. But for a college athlete or a marathon runner who wants to shave off every second or every step that they can, having a watch like this could help them in the long term. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is if you're responsible with the data. Because I know that if I buy this activity watch and I take it out for a run, I'm going to be looking at the data at the end of the run and not during it, not letting the technology interfere with my normal course of life. Because technology isn't evil. I'm not trying to argue that it is. I just want you to be aware. Notice your behaviors and give yourself options. Because anxiety and compulsive behavior often lead to the mindset that we have no choice. No choice but to check our phone, no choice but to check our watch. But I promise you that you always have a choice. You are not obligated to a lump of metal. And most of these restrictions, 10,000 steps a day, 90 beats per minute, they're arbitrary anyway. They don't really mean anything for you. So know yourself and know how you respond to technology. But ask yourself if an activity watch truly is the best piece of technology for your runs. Thank you.